Ridiculous.
Ridiculous, but I bet it was for a significant amount of money.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, but fun. I'd watch it. Look, Jake Paul wants to test himself against actual, not just world champion, but one of the greatest of all time.
Really fought, and it wasn't fixed. Jake Paul would not survive 45 seconds.
I don't know about that. I think it would take a few rounds.
Really?
But yeah. First of all, Jake is a lot bigger. Jake's a lot bigger.
But what way would they fight?
Well, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my what I'm looking at right now.
Joe Rogan was left stunned after hearing that Jake Paul had reportedly offered Francis Ngannou a fight following the cancellation of his bout with Gervonta Davis. Speaking on his podcast, Rogan described the idea as wild, even reckless, for the YouTuber turned boxer. After all, Ngannou, a former UFC champion and one of the most powerful punchers in combat sports history, isn't someone to take lightly. Rogan questioned whether Jake truly understood the kind of danger he'd be stepping into. Still, he admitted that if it ever did happen, it would be one of the biggest and most talked about events in boxing.
Nikista calls Francis. This is Francis telling the story. Nikista calls Francis and says, "Hey, we need your help. We need an opponent for Jake. Tank is out." And Francis says, "All right." And Francis says, "Well, how can I help you?" And Nikista says, "Well, we're looking at an opponent for Jake. Tank Davis is out." And Francis says, "All right, but specifically, how can I help you?" Nikista takes a third swing at the bat. He says, "Well, we need an opponent. We need a boxer. We need a partner. We need somebody to fight Jake. Tank is out." And Francis asks him again, "Okay, what?"
After Jake Paul's exhibition bout with Gervonta Davis collapsed due to the growing legal issues surrounding Davis, Paul and his team began searching for a new opponent. One of the most surprising names to surface was Francis Ngannou, the former UFC heavyweight champion turned crossover boxer. With his sheer size, devastating power, and global reputation, Ngannou stands as one of the most dangerous strikers on the planet.
Like Mike Tyson, who's 58, Anderson Silva, who was way past his prime, people like Nate Diaz, who were way smaller. Gervonta Davis really did take the piss. I mean, that was just the craziest shout ever. To go from fighting Gervonta Davis, way smaller, to now boxing Francis Ngannou. I mean, listen, if he does it, fair play. But I just call #1 bullshit on this brother because I don't see this happening. No.
This is #1 bullshit.
I just don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. Nate Diaz, yeah, 100%. I mean, he beat him once already. I'm sure Nate Diaz would love to get another big payday because obviously boxing on Netflix and going up against Jake Paul, given his success, given the name that he has and given the magnitude of his events, Nate Diaz will get paid an absolute fortune once again. We know that it wasn't too long ago Jake Paul was talking about boxing Anthony Joshua. And that never came to fruition. There's absolutely no way he would box Anthony Joshua. If he did, if he was to do something like that, whether it be Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou, I'd give him his props. I'd give him his credit. And you never know. Maybe he would do it just for the clout. Because in many ways it would be, sorry about the airport notifications, it would be, an admirable thing to do. And it will be Jake Paul taking on somebody bigger.
Francis Ngannou revealed that Jake Paul's team reaching out about stepping in as a replacement for Gervonta Davis completely caught him off guard. According to Ngannou, the offer came out of nowhere and didn't align with his current career goals. While there was reportedly some discussion about money, he turned down the idea, explaining that the timing and terms simply didn't make sense. Ngannou questioned how moving from Davis to him could even be seen as a logical matchup, stressing that for him, it's not about chasing a payday, it's about pursuing fights that make professional sense.
Saga, I think the fight is going to be completely canceled and rescheduled, and now we have potential opponent names and some people being ruled out coming into today. This is not a joke. It was said by Mike Coppinger and others that the #1 candidate to replace Tank Davis in a Jake Paul fight, probably on a different date, was going to be Francis Ngannou. What the But we have an update on that and other potential names that Jake could fight. Again, I think on a separate date, and why I think the Jake and Tank fight is completely off. No more, maybe, no more, we don't think it'll happen.
Michael Bisping highlighted the massive size difference in the rumored matchup between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou, noting that Paul's original target was Gervonta Davis, a much smaller lightweight, before that fight fell through. Bisping pointed out that going from Davis to Ngannou places Paul at the complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of physicality and danger. He emphasized that the leap from facing a smaller opponent to someone with Ngannou's sheer size, reach, and knockout power isn't just a shift in skill or experience, it's a leap into a whole new level of threat.
Fight Jake to replace Gervonta. I'm like, who's Jake? You know, like, I was so confused, you know, like, I wasn't expecting that at all. And he said, yeah, Jake Paul, you know, he's fighting. And I'm like, no, bro, come on. Don't disrespect me like that. And then they even say like, they even come out after and say, and what if the number are good? He sent out some number. I'm like, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started talk. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. He make no sense for me. It's not my
Former UFC champion Daniel Cormier didn't hold back when addressing Jake Paul's rumored interest in fighting Francis Ngannou. Cormier warned that stepping in against someone with Ngannou's kind of power and experience could have serious consequences. He emphasized the massive gap in both size and skill, noting that Paul simply isn't prepared for the kind of danger a heavyweight striker from an MMA background brings. Cormier framed it plainly: this wouldn't just be another show or payday. In this case, the risk could easily outweigh any reward.
Right? Boxing is much different than mixed martial arts. The target audience might be the same, but the demographics different. The places where people are brought up are different. There's bigger entourages in boxing. It's just a different world in boxing. We've known that from the very beginning. We know that Gervonta Davis was not going to just play to Jake Paul's rules. I still don't know exactly why this thing is falling apart, but it is falling apart bad. It is bursting at the seams. We are almost exactly where we should have never started. This should have never gotten started, but it did. But we are almost now exactly where we need to be in the fight, and that's it.
Several analysts have flagged the idea of Jake Paul facing Francis Ngannou on such short notice as a high-risk move, not just for Paul, but for the overall fight narrative. Originally, Paul was scheduled to face Gervonta Davis, who pulled out late, prompting Paul's team to approach Ngannou as a replacement. However, as Ngannou himself noted, stepping in on short notice doesn't fit his career plan. Strategically, the limited preparation time would put Paul at a serious disadvantage against a heavyweight of Ngannou's size, power, and experience. Many experts are drawing parallels between a potential Paul versus Ngannou matchup and Tyson Fury's bout with Ngannou. The comparisons focus on crossover appeal, stylistic mismatch, and spectacle taking precedence over traditional boxing merit. Just as Fury, despite being the reigning heavyweight champion, admitted that Ngannou presented one of the toughest challenges of his last decade. A Paul Ngannou fight would follow a similar pattern. A social media famous boxer stepping up to face a monstrous athlete with elite power.
Paul goes from fighting Gervonta Davis to calling out Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul don't want those problems. I can't say it any different. Jake Paul does not want any Francis Ngannou problems. He don't. He does not want those issues. While I think it's crazy and I credit him for doing that, and I'm surprised he did that, this could be a ploy. Him poking out his chest, saying, I want Francis. He don't want those Francis Ngannou problems. I don't care what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul gets in there with Francis. Francis will knock his head off this planet. You don't want those Francis problems. I watched Francis put down Tyson Fury. Sure, Anthony Joshua beat him. But even if Jake got power, I don't think he got power to be dealing with Francis. Because all it takes is for one.
Cormier also questioned Jake Paul's motives, suggesting the move is more about publicity than a serious competitive challenge. He pointed out that Paul may be underestimating what it takes to face a heavyweight capable of punching through gloves. While Ngannou's power is already legendary in MMA, in a boxing ring it becomes even more focused and dangerous. Cormier cautioned that if Jake steps into the ring without fully grasping the differences between MMA striking and boxing defense, it could be a very short night for him.
What's interesting about this is, okay, if they push it back to December, then that's slightly different. But this is the kind of one situation where you're kind of 10 days out, 2 weeks out from a fight, whenever they first got wind of this problem. This is the kind of situation where it would be possible that Jake Paul and Nikita Badarian and MVP, who are very, very shrewd people, this is the one occasion where they might end up making a mistake, taking someone at short notice who they shouldn't take. Because there'd be a whole raft of people putting their hand up for it, wouldn't they? Thinking, I'll take him at short notice. I'll make out that I've been sitting on a beach eating and drinking for the last 6 months. But anything just to get in there with him. And then on the night, I'm gonna knock his head off. There'll be loads of people putting their hand up for this, and you'd have to be incredibly careful about who you took at short notice, because for it to have any kind of meaning, you would need to take a decent opponent at short notice, because obviously they're up against it because it's short notice. You couldn't take some barely warm body at short notice, because that would be even worse than giving them full notice. So this is the one area, the one situation in which it would be easy for them to make a mistake, but they don't make mistakes with things like this. They just don't. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't been tempted into, somebody. Yeah, Ngannou, that'd be a mistake. It'd be such a mistake. I know he got flattened by Joshua, but so what? Joshua is a 2-time unified champion of the world, and Ngannou's 270 pounds of absolute granite. That would have been a terrible, terrible mistake if they'd given him the fight.
And he dropped, like, people. I know, my opinion, Tyson Fury won that fight with Ngannou, but he still put Tyson Fury.
He was close.
Chael Sonnen recently shared his thoughts on the potential matchup between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou, combining both amusement and curiosity. From a purely sporting perspective, he argued, the fight isn't a balanced contest. It's more about seeing how much punishment Paul can take. Sonnen reminded viewers that when Ngannou faced Tyson Fury, a seasoned heavyweight with elite boxing experience and a size advantage over Paul, it only took one clean shot to drop him. In Sonnen's view, if Fury struggled to survive Ngannou's power, the idea that Paul could withstand those same punches without serious risk seems highly unrealistic.
Francis says fighting Jake Paul wouldn't make sense. Well, what in hell do you think Tyson Fury got for boxing you? These aren't mean things from me. This is a reality. Tyson Fury knew there was a check. Name one person you'd rather see Jake Paul fight than Francis Ngannou. Is a real challenge. How Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, Anderson Silva, Mike Tyson, how those aren't real challenges, I don't know. But this is the story as we're told. And do you see where that would satisfy so much? Do you see where that would force even the biggest hater to be quiet? And my job for something to make sense is the biggest check against the easiest opponent. I cannot think of anything I would rather see.
Jake Paul has built his reputation on big promotions and attention-grabbing stunts. But this latest idea doesn't seem to land. Unlike his previous fights, which featured opponents closer to his weight and experience, this matchup feels unbalanced and directionless. Observers suggest that Paul's strategy of staying relevant through unconventional bouts may finally be losing its impact. There's a growing perception that the event was created more for spectacle than genuine competition, a notion reinforced by stagnant ticket sales, despite weeks of promotion and interviews.